They hung her upside down at dawn, and no one blinked except Eli McCall. He hadn't meant to come into Dry Gulch that day. The wind had picked up bad out by Sagebrush Hollow, rattling his fence posts and emptying his water barrels. He needed kerosene, salt, and maybe a few nails to patch the roof before the monsoon season rolled in. That was all. Simple errands, done quick, no need to linger. But when he rounded the bend and saw the crowd, the stillness of it, the way people just stood there and didn't speak, something caught in his chest. She was strung up outside the saloon, hung by her ankles from the beam over the porch awning, her long black hair brushing the dirt. A wooden sign swung lazily above her. Witch. Thief. The red letters looked wet in the sunrise, even if they weren't. Eli pulled his hat low. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just looked. She was young, Apache by the markings on her belt. No older than 20, skin dark and bruised, wrists raw where the rope bit deep. She didn't struggle, didn't scream, just hung there like some sacred thing desecrated for sport. From across the dusty street, no one came forward. A preacher's wife peeked from behind her curtains. Two miners smoked in silence, their eyes stuck on the horizon. A boy tugged on his father's sleeve. "Is she dead?" the boy asked. The man didn't answer, just turned him away. Eli's boots were still, grounded, anchored in place, like they'd rooted into the red dirt. Midnight, his stallion, shifted behind him, nostrils flaring. The horse didn't like it here. Eli didn't either. Old McCall's back. Someone muttered from near the smithy. It didn't sound like a welcome, more like a warning. He didn't answer, didn't even look. He just kept his eyes on her, on the girl hanging by her ankles, her jaw clenched, mouth cracked from heat. A smear of blood ran down one cheek like war paint. The wind picked up. The sign above her creaked, then spun slightly, turning the word witch into thief and back again, like it couldn't decide which lie it liked better. She opened her eyes. Just for a second, just long enough for him to see it wasn't fear in there. It was defiance. The kind of defiance that cuts deeper than a blade. The kind of look that reaches through time and touches old wounds. It was the same look his daughter gave him the night the fever took her. She had been 7, angry at dying, angry at him for not stopping it. Eli looked away first. He turned slow, boots heavy, and walked toward the mercantile. Didn't speak, didn't glance back. Not at the girl, not at the noose, not at the town that had forgotten how to be ashamed. Mr. Withers behind the counter didn't greet him, just measured out the salt and said, "She cursed the preacher's wife, left herbs on her porch." Eli said nothing, just paid, nodded, and stepped outside. The wind hit him harder now, carrying dust and something else, something bitter. He glanced once, sideways, at the girl. She was watching him. Not begging, just watching, judging. Midnight snorted as he approached. Eli's fingers clenched around the reins. A mother across the street hissed at her son to hush when he asked why the lady was hanging like a pig before slaughter. The sheriff's office door remained shut. They always did that here, left justice outside where the son could do the work. Eli mounted, turned Midnight toward the ridge. He didn't look back, but as they rode out of town, he could still feel her eyes on his spine, could still see the slow sway of her body, could still hear the creak of that damn sign in the wind. That look followed him up the ridge, long after he left the town behind. The fire crackled in Eli's shack, but it couldn't burn away her eyes. He'd built the place after the war with whatever scraps the wind hadn't carried off. A lean-to more than a cabin, slumped against the side of Sagebrush Hollow, held together by mule spit and regret. The walls breathed cold at night, but that didn't bother him. Silence did. He hadn't spoken to a soul in 12 days. Not unless the fire counted, or midnight. Now, as the flames danced low, Eli sat with his back against the post, watching shadows shift along the warped floor. The girl's face kept slipping into the dark corners, into the smoke. Not the one from town, no. The other one. The one from 20 years ago. She had spit at his boots before they kicked the barrel. They'd told him she was a scout, that she carried messages in her braids, that she'd slit throats while men slept. She'd been 16. He remembered her ankles swinging above the dry riverbed. That was all. Until today. Now another girl with the same eyes, same chin, same defiance, looked at him from under a witch sign, and Eli couldn't scrub it from his thoughts. Couldn't bury it again. He tried. Sipped stale coffee. Sharpened a rusted blade. Polished a rifle he hadn't fired in 3 winters. None of it worked. He lay down before midnight, but sleep wouldn't take him. Every time he shut his eyes, the noose creaked. Around 2, he tried to tell himself it wasn't his fight. She wasn't his kin, wasn't even from his world. But the words tasted like bile. He rose before dawn. No saddle, no pack. Just midnight and the knife he'd used to gut deer in the Dakotas. Sharp enough to cut rope. Sharp enough to silence a thought. The trail back into town ran silent under his boots. He kept to the edges, shadow to shadow. Dry Gulch still slept. The sky burned pale behind him, bruised purple where morning hadn't yet arrived. He reached the edge of town in less than an hour, and she was still there. Her body hung limp now. No defiance in her limbs, just gravity. The sign was gone. Wind or conscience had taken it. Her hair swept the ground, slow, pendulous, like some church bell morning Sunday too early. No one was around. He crossed behind the saloon, kept low near the boards. The girl didn't stir when he touched her shoulder. Skin clammy, pulse thin. The rope was wound tight around her ankles, twisted with cruelty. He didn't hesitate. The knife slipped through with a single draw. She dropped, right into his arms. Light, yes, but not empty. Number. She carried something heavier than weight. Shame maybe. Injustice. Eli had borne it before. Still did. He shifted her gently, cradling her against his coat, and turned back toward the brush. That's when the first dog barked. Far, but not far enough. He didn't wait. Midnight caught his scent and stepped forward. Eli tossed the girl over the saddle, mounted behind, and they were gone. The trees swallowed them. The wind, too. She groaned once near the ridge. Barely a sound, barely human, but alive. By the time they reached his shack, the sun smeared red across the basin. Eli laid her down on the old wool blanket, fetched a tin cup, and filled it with rainwater. Her lips were cracked. Her brow burned. But she breathed. That was enough. He didn't touch her again. Just sat outside the shack, rifle across his knees, knife still wet with rope fibers. An hour passed. Then 2. Inside, the girl coughed once. Sharp. Dry. Real. Eli didn't move. When she woke later, she screamed a burst of panic and memory. Kicked out wildly, gasping. He didn't go in. Just spoke through the wall. You're not in Dry Gulch anymore. Silence. Then softer, steadier. You're safe now. No reply. Only the ragged rhythm of breathing. He stared at the dirt, let the moment settle like dust. Then he whispered, more to himself than her. Don't make me bury another one. And her body was limp in his arms, but her pulse still whispered rebellion. Eli had carried wounded men off battlefields, hefted sacks of feed twice her size, but this felt heavier than all of them. Not in weight, in what it meant, in what it stirred. She didn't speak, didn't wake. Her face, half shadowed by hair matted with sweat, looked too still. For a moment, he thought she'd slipped away. Then her chest lifted barely, but enough. Midnight moved ahead without a word, hooves careful along the canyon trail. Eli cradled the girl tight as the land fell behind them. The sky lightened into copper and bone. Sagebrush Hollow loomed just ahead. It wasn't much, just a patch of stubborn earth, a crooked shack, and silence wide enough to drown in. Had dismounted slow, carried her inside, laid her gently on the cot, covering her with the only clean blanket he had. She didn't stir. Eli lit the fire the way he always did. Flint, steel, dry bark, no matches. Hands steady, movements practiced. Like war, like habit. He boiled water in the blackened pot, added a sliver of jerky just to scent the steam. Then he poured a tin cup and set it beside her. She didn't reach for it. Her lips were cracked, skin flushed. Fever was rising. He cleaned her wrists with whiskey, wrapped them with the last strip of clean cloth. The burns from the rope ran deep red, angry. When he touched her arm, she flinched, but didn't fight. He didn't speak, didn't ask her name, just stepped outside and sat on the rail. Midnight nickered softly, ears twitching at the morning breeze. Inside, she coughed again. Once. Dry. Then silence. By late afternoon, she shifted. A groan. A hand brushing the wall. Head didn't go in. Instead, he called out, "There's water by your side." No answer. Just breathing uneven. Human. By dusk, she sat up. Slowly. With care. Braced against the post, eyes dull but aware. He didn't turn. Just listened to the rhythm of breath. Eventually, a voice rough, like gravel over stone, broke the quiet. "You got a name?" She waited. Then, "Naomi." It landed soft, but solid. He turned just enough to see her watching him through the crooked doorway. "You Apache?" She gave the smallest nod. "Thought so. They say you cursed the preacher's wife." Naomi let out a snort. Bitter. Dry. "I left medicine on her porch, that's all." "What kind?" "Bitterroot. Snakeweed. Sweet flag." He blinked. Those weren't foreign names to him. "My wife tried learning those. After the war." Naomi didn't reply. Just looked down at her wrist. At the cloth. The care. "I didn't ask for thanks," she said finally. "Only hoped she'd live." Eli looked back toward the fire, then toward her. She did. Naomi didn't smile, but her shoulders eased. Just slightly. Later, as he salted the meat, she watched every move. Like she was memorizing it. Like she'd have to do it herself. She tracked how he folded the blanket, how he cleaned the knife, how he fed Midnight. Eyes sharp. Survivor eyes. He didn't ask questions. She didn't offer. But something was being built. Wordless. Fragile. Real. If you've ever found trust in a place you didn't expect or felt a stranger become something more, feel free to share your thoughts below. Sometimes, it's in the quietest beginnings that the strongest stories rise. She didn't speak, but she watched everything. Naomi stayed near the far wall of the shack, her back pressed against the corner where shadows clung longer than daylight. She moved little, but her eyes never stopped. They followed Eli when he stepped out to fetch firewood, tracked the way he salted meat, tested water by the lip of the tin cup, brushed dust off a bent horseshoe. Like she was trying to decide what kind of man she'd landed near. Eli said little. He figured silence was softer than questions. Every morning, he left water and cornbread within her reach. Every night, he cleared the coals and rested the rifle across his knees. She never touched the knife tucked under her blanket. He never reached for his. That was their pact. Unspoken. Unbroken. On the third day, she spoke again. "Why didn't you leave me hanging?" He looked up from whittling a splintered post. "You were still breathing." "That's not a reason." "No," he agreed. "It's not." She tilted her head. "You got a name?" "Ellie McCall." "You the one folks call Ghost of the Ridge?" He hesitated. "Used to be." Naomi's eyes narrowed just a little. "That a confession?" "Number. That's a past I don't visit often." She didn't smile, but her mouth twitched, half amused, half tired. Later that night, she moved closer to the fire. Only a few steps, just enough to feel the heat. Ellie didn't comment. She sat cross-legged, back still stiff, wrists still bound in clean cloth. After a while, she spoke again. "You fought in the war?" He nodded. "Which side?" "South." She didn't flinch. "My father fought too. Not in your war. In ours. He died near Fort Craig trying to get food to a winter camp." There was no blame in her voice. Just a weight, aged like stone. "I'm sorry," Eli said. She nodded. Then, "You ever kill Apache?" The question didn't carry anger. Only memory. "Yes," he said. Naomi looked at the fire. "Then why help me?" Eli poked the embers. "Because the last time I looked away, I never slept right again." Naomi said nothing. But she didn't look away. And neither did he. By the next morning, she stood on her own. Leaned against the door frame, arms crossed, watching the wind stir the brush. Eli poured coffee. "You got any place you trust?" She shook her head. "Places don't matter. People do." He nodded. Midnight stomped once, restless from being still. "You plan to leave?" he asked. when I can walk farther than the front yard. Fair enough. They shared a quiet lunch beans and a scrap of dried rabbit. Naomi asked about the herbs growing near the creek bed. Eli shrugged. Wife used to tend them. Haven't touched them since. You should. He didn't answer. That evening, she took the knife from under the blanket. Not to use it, to sharpen it. Slow, steady. Eli watched her from the porch. He didn't ask what for. If you've ever had to decide whether to trust someone who once stood on the wrong side, share your thoughts. Trust isn't easy, especially when history stands between two people. But sometimes, it begins with silence and stays because of what's done next. The wanted poster didn't show her strength, just her silence. It appeared overnight, tacked to the saloon wall, crooked and already curling at the edges from dew. A rough sketch, dark hair, high cheekbones, blank eyes. No hint of defiance in the lines, just a shadow of a girl and the words, wanted for witchery, aiding the escape of justice, $50 reward, dead or alive. Signed by Marshall Silas Grady. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. She hexed the preacher's wife, someone said. She cursed the river, said another. Now she's got a man hiding her. A third voice added, quieter, more dangerous. Eli knew how fast that kind of talk spread. He also knew it wasn't the girl they were truly afraid of. It was what she represented, something they couldn't control, couldn't label without fearing what it said about themselves. That morning, Naomi sat on the porch step, watching a crow peck near the water bucket. Your town likes signs, she said. Eli didn't look up. They like clarity, even if it's built on lies. She held the old bandage in her hands, twisting it slowly. $50 is enough for hungry men to act brave. They'll come, Eli said. Naomi nodded. Then I should go. Number. She looked at him, steady. I can walk now. You wouldn't get far. And they're not just coming for you anymore. She didn't argue, just stood straighter. He studied her for a long breath. Then, we'll move camp deeper. There's a split canyon east. Hard to find, easy to defend. You've used it before? Eli gave a tight nod. War doesn't leave many secrets. They packed light. No fire, no trail. Eli led midnight by hand. Naomi followed without complaint, though her breath still came harder than it should. By sundown, the canyon walls closed around them. They didn't speak, just moved. When they reached a shaded hollow beneath a rock ledge, Eli stopped. This'll do. Naomi knelt beside a scrub bush, brushing dust away from its base. You see that? He looked, roots bent in odd patterns. Wind trap, she said. Bad for smoke, good for echo. And she wasn't just surviving now. She was planning. That night, they didn't light a fire. Eli loaded his rifle by moonlight. Naomi shaped a spearhead from bone and tied it to a branch with cord she twisted from yucca strands. At one point, she asked, why do they care so much? Eli didn't answer at first. Then, because if they admit they were wrong, they'd have to hang themselves too. She nodded. Didn't say more. In the early hours, Eli heard hoofbeats in the distance. Faint, but real. They were hunting now. Back at Dry Gulch, folks had started murmuring about smoke seen rising in the hills. The preacher's cough returned. The wind howled strange one night. And yet, none of that scared them as much as the idea that she might still be alive. Not because she was a threat, but because her survival proved they had been wrong. If you've ever seen how fear twists truth into punishment, or watched someone try to rewrite justice with a bounty, leave a thought below. Your voice might just help untangle the silence left behind. They didn't build a fort, just a place they could stand. Sagebrush Hollow wasn't made for fighting. The canyon curved too sharply, and shadows came early. But Eli knew land like soldiers knew wounds, where the pressure sat, where the pain came first. He walked the perimeter twice that morning, fingers brushing sandstone, eyes narrowing at the ledges above. This place ever saved your life before? Naomi asked, tying back her hair with a strip of leather. Eli nodded. Once, during a storm. She looked around. This isn't a storm? Not yet. They set to work without another word. Naomi gathered branches, stripping them for poles. Eli stacked flat stones in a half moon against the wind. They didn't speak of weapons, not in terms of killing, but Naomi made 2 short spears from mesquite and sharpened bone. To scare, she said, not pierce. Eli didn't argue. He buried bear traps instead, deep enough to be missed, shallow enough to spring. The rifle he cleaned twice, loaded once, set in place beside a ridge shelf, overlooking the narrow pass. She found berries and chewed bitter leaves for focus. He boiled rainwater and rolled blankets into packs. By dusk, the camp didn't look like much, but it would hold. They ate in silence. Dry meat, a handful of nuts. Naomi crushed some into paste and pressed it against the last of her bruises. You ever think about what comes next? She asked. Eli looked up. Next? If we survive this. If they come and leave. He stirred the coals. Don't plan that far. I do. That quieted him. You think they'll listen? She asked, eyes catching his across the fire. Number. You think they'll believe me? Number. You think they'll shoot you first? A pause. Then. Probably. She exhaled through her nose. Then we better make it worth something. Later, as night pressed in, Naomi walked to the canyon mouth. Wind brushed her face, dry and sharp. Ravens flew low this morning, she said without turning. Eli joined her at the ledge. That mean anything? They're watching. Waiting. For what? Naomi's fingers curled around the ridge stone. To see if we'll stand or kneel. He didn't reply. Didn't need to. That night, neither of them slept. Naomi lay with her hand on the spear shaft. Eli sat with his rifle balanced across one knee, eyes fixed beyond the trees. Somewhere in the dark, a coyote howled. Then hoofbeats. Faint. Measured. Wrong. If you've ever had to choose between running and standing your ground, even when the odds seemed impossible, share your story below. Some choices carve the soul. Others, they build it. In the distance, a coyote howled and Eli loaded his last cartridge. He sat beneath the ledge, fingers slow but precise. One bullet slid into the chamber. Just one. He didn't expect to fire it. But a man prepares, even when hope don't ask him to. Naomi crouched near the ridge wall, sharpening her bone spear in rhythm with the wind. Her breath came quiet, controlled, focused. They're coming closer, she said. Eli nodded. They didn't ask each other what came next. They already knew. The morning came with no sun, just a gray veil stretched across the sky. Midnight shifted restlessly below, ears pinned. Eli calmed the horse with a soft whistle. The animal didn't settle. Naomi stood, her eyes fixed toward the path below. 3 riders. 1 wagon. You sure? She gave a dry look. Apache eyes. Eli smirked, then grew still. Grady? Couldn't tell from this far. But the man in front holds himself like someone who don't question orders. That meant Grady. They moved back into position. Naomi placed stones across the trail markers she could track from above. Eli settled into the firing notch he'd carved days earlier. As the riders neared, their voices carried faint over the rock. Laughter. Mocking. The wagon wheels squeaked under the weight of something heavy. Then a voice clear, sharp. Grady. You think she's still breathing? Another man replied, Doesn't matter. Folks want closure, not truth. Eli's jaw clenched. Naomi whispered, That's why they brought the noose. They waited until the wagon stopped. 4 men. 1 woman tied in the back blindfolded, gagged. Not Naomi. A decoy. Trying to draw you out, Naomi muttered. Eli didn't flinch. Won't work. Below, Grady raised his voice. Elias McCall, he shouted. Come on out. Bring the witch. We're offering clemency if you hand her over. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Clemency? Eli said nothing. Grady tried again. You're harboring a fugitive. I've got 50 witnesses willing to swear she cursed a child to death. Funny, Naomi said. It was a fever, not a curse. Fever's not as profitable, Eli answered. They stayed hidden. The men fidgeted. One began pacing. Another lit a cigar and turned his back to the canyon wall. Naomi pointed. That one he's scared. Eli adjusted his scope. That one shoots first. A long silence followed. Then Grady yelled, voice souring. You really gonna die for a squaw? Eli didn't answer. but his trigger finger tightened. Naomi leaned close. You still got your ghost stories? Eli glanced her way. Why? She smiled, just barely. Might be time to make a new one. He gave a slow nod. We stand? Naomi gripped her spear. We stand. Below, the horses began to stir. One reared slightly, unsettled by something unseen. Eli breathed slow. Wait for them to move. No shot unless they fire first. Naomi slid to the lower ledge, stone in hand. Then she stopped. Listened. Hoofbeats. More of them. From the opposite ridge, another group appeared. But these weren't soldiers. They were townsfolk. Men. Women. One boy, Tommy Whitlow. At the front, Agnes Bellwether, holding nothing but a walking stick and the stubborn light in her eyes. Naomi's breath caught. Why are they here? Eli shook his head. Guess we'll find out. Sometimes, courage echius. Sometimes, it arrives uninvited but right on time. If you've ever seen fear give way to courage not in heroes, but in everyday folks, leave your thoughts. Moments like this aren't made from legends. They're made from decisions. The dust cloud rose before the rifles did. Eli stayed low, eyes trained through the rifle notch. Below, Grady dismounted. His boots struck dry stone like thunderclaps. He adjusted his belt, straightened his coat, tried to look like law. But the fear in his fingers betrayed him. Across the canyon, Agnes Bellwether planted her cane like it was a battle flag. Beside her, Tommy Whitlow gripped a wooden slingshot. His lip trembled, but he stood tall. The townsfolk spread, slow and quiet, lining the rise, watching, not yet picking sides. Grady noticed. He didn't like it. Elias McCall, he barked. Bring her down. She stands trial today. Eli stood slowly. A ghost on the ridge. Naomi appeared beside him. Spine straight, spear in hand, chin high. No longer hiding. Gasps below. That's her, someone whispered. Grady shouted louder. She's a danger to this town. Eli raised his voice not loud, but clear. Number you are. A hush fell over the canyon. Eli stepped forward. You've used fear like a rope, Grady. You hang truth and call it justice. Grady's face reddened. She cursed people. She healed people. She's Apache. So was the land before you paved it. Naomi walked to the ledge, eyes sweeping the crowd. Calm, grounded. She came to treat the preacher's wife, Eli said. Left herbs, was chased out like a dog. A murmur swept through the crowd. Agnes Bellwether stepped forward. My daughter drank her tea, she called. She walks again because of it. More murmurs. Grady tried to rally. We have laws. Tommy shouted. You got lies. Grady spun. You think this boy knows truth? Deputy Hank Colburn stepped out, then, slow and deliberate. I think you're the one afraid of truth, Silas. Grady drew his gun. For a second, time froze. Then Agnes slammed her cane into the dirt. You'll hang her. You hang me first. Gasps. One by one, townsfolk stepped forward, not shouting, not armed, just standing. Grady looked around. No alleys left. No orders followed. No crowd cheering. Only silence. He lowered his weapon, then threw it in the dust. You're all fools, he spat. She'll turn on you. Eli stepped forward. You already did. Naomi walked down slowly. No guards, no ropes, no fear. She passed through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Untouched. At the bottom, she stopped beside Eli. Grady turned and walked away. No one stopped him. No one followed. Behind her, the news still swung in the wind. But no one looked at it now. They were watching her instead. Sometimes justice doesn't come with a gavel. Sometimes it walks down a canyon wall with her head held high. Have you ever seen someone reclaim their dignity not through violence, but through presence? Let us know below. Stories like this don't just end. They ripple. The nooses swayed, but no one dared lift a hand. Dry Gulch stood quiet that next morning. Not silent from fear, but from something rarer. Shame. Grady was gone. No posse, no law. Just dust and the uncomfortable weight of realization settling in the bones of every man and woman who'd stood by and watched too long. Deputy Hank Colburn removed the posters himself. Didn't say much. Just tore them down, one nail at a time, like someone trying to undo years of silence. Back in Sagebrush Hollow, Eli stood at the edge of the creek, watching the water run clearer than it had in months. Naomi sat nearby, mixing herbs. She didn't ask what came next. Neither did he. But both knew something had shifted. Around midday, footsteps echoed from the ridge. They didn't hide this time. It was Tommy, carrying a basket awkwardly filled with cornbread and peaches. Behind him, Agnes came with a wrapped bundle of blankets. A few others followed, unsure but present. They didn't speak at first, just placed the items near the fire. Naomi looked up, wary. Tommy cleared his throat. You fixed my brother's leg. He's walking now. Naomi said nothing. Agnes stepped forward. We can help mend the roof. If you'll let us. Eli gave Naomi a look, not asking, just waiting. She nodded. Once. That was enough. Over the next hours, hands moved where words failed. Wood was stacked. Stones were reset. Water pails refilled. Someone brought seeds. Someone else, sugar. No declarations. No grand apologies. Just quiet effort. That evening, Hank showed up. Hutin Hunt. I was wrong, he said. Naomi studied him. You kept your gun holstered. That counts. He smiled faint, crooked. Still owe more than that. Then come back with salve for old burns. The girl from the wagon needs it. He nodded and left. Later, Naomi and Eli sat near the fire. She held the old witch, thief, sign. It had faded. The paint flaked off like dead skin. I'll keep it, she said. You sure? They need to remember. She stared into the flames. So do I. That night, no nightmares came. Only the creak of wood expanding in warmth. The crackle of fire. The slow breath of a ridge no longer haunted. If you've ever been part of a community learning how to say, we were wrong, share a moment. Healing doesn't always come with fanfare. Sometimes, it starts with a basket of bread and silence. No sermons were said. No songs were sung, but the first stones were laid. They didn't call it a clinic, or a church, or anything that sounded official. It was just a circle of flat stones beneath the ridge, a fire pit at the center, and people who no longer turned away. Naomi built shelves from driftwood. She lined them with jars, roots, dried leaves, pine sap, crushed bone. She didn't label them. Those who needed help didn't care for names, only results. Eli hammered beams into a leaning wall, using scraps from the last storm. He taught Tommy to hold a nail straight, how to square a corner without measuring. No one spoke about what had happened, but they kept coming. One woman brought her child, coughing blood into rags. Naomi laid a poultice on the boy's chest. He slept through the night. A rancher limped in with a twisted ankle. Eli reset the joint, while Naomi brewed bark tea for the swelling. They never charged. But bread showed up on the steps. Firewood was stacked beside the hut, unasked. And once, quietly, someone left a new pair of boots for Naomi, child-sized, but sturdy. One evening, Naomi picked up the old witch, thief, sign. The letters were barely legible now. She didn't repaint them, just nailed it beside her shelves. Eli raised a brow. She shrugged. If someone forgets, they'll ask, and I'll tell them. He nodded. The truth didn't need polishing. It just needed room to stand. When the first snow fell over Whisper Ridge, it dusted the crooked cabin roof like forgiveness. Children herded chickens with laughter instead of shouting. Naomi taught them how to read a fever through the back of a hand. Eli stacked firewood, patched torn boots, and sharpened tools without a word. People kept coming quietly, without fanfare. An old woman walked 3 days with a pouch of dried herbs from her grandmother's line. A war-torn man came looking for stillness. A young mother arrived cradling her baby, fleeing a town whose name she wouldn't say aloud. No one asked, "Where are you from?" Only, "Where does it hurt?" One late winter morning, a group appeared at the ridge line. No rifles, just letters. At the front rode a girl barely 20, holding a hand-drawn map and the kind of eyes that searched for something unspoken. "I'm looking for someone who fought at Red Hawk," she said. He left something behind that's not done. Naomi glanced at Eli. He didn't flinch, just nodded. Come have some ginger tea, he said. It's a cold night. No one spoke of war anymore. No one mentioned the rope. Only hands moved now mending shirts, mixing medicine, lifting the weary. One evening, Eli sat by the doorway, bathed in the gold of a late sunset. Naomi sat nearby, flipping through a notebook filled with Jory's clumsy handwriting. The boy, once too shy to speak, now taught others to bind wounds and name plants. You still dream about the battlefield? Naomi asked. Eli was quiet. Then, no more smoke, no more gunfire. What do you see? A child from Mescalero setting a broken leg. Another, once mute, now reading stories aloud. She nodded. Then I guess you stayed long enough. That night, the fire lit